It's too nice a day to get an audience today.
Are we live?
Yep.
Okay. Hi from the Josephy Center. Today we have Steve Arment, local artist, wood carver extraordinaire. He's going to walk us through Heartwood and who knows.
Who knows? Yeah. Okay.
Take it from here, Steve.
Okay. I'm a local woodworker and part-time cook and lawnmower. Yeah, this show at the Josephy Center, Anna Vogel and I conjured up the idea of a house where we made it, the display, very intentional for the whole theme of the show. And it has to do with what Shakespeare said about all the world's a stage. So we sort of created a theater. We wanted this to be a place where people could look at things and interact. And I've seen Dara doing her homework in the kitchen, and I've seen a lot of people sitting in the dining room, folks kicked back on the bed. And at that point, does it become performance art? Or does that just simply way people gravitate towards space? I don't know. But the theme of the show is to make people, or the idea of the show is to make people think about their space and whether they look at their living situation intentionally or unintentionally. You can take a $1 million home and you see them with lawn furniture, and you see a double wide that looks like a palace. So it's all to deal with the interaction of whether we give that a priority or not, or whether we have other things to do. If you're conscious of your space, you won't think about it as, I've seen this in a magazine, so this must be good until the next magazine comes out. But there are those people, no question there. Let's go through the exhibit, and then I'll talk about the idea of, I'd like to talk about being a community artist, not just one that deals necessarily with gallery space or shows, exhibits, but the idea of an artist that does everything for the community and in the community, because that's what I do, and it's a model for artists to work as working artists, which is difficult if you're doing gallery work or you're doing anything. But if you're willing to be a community artist, then you're always busy. There's always things need to be done. But right now, let's start with the idea of this clock. The idea, I'd always wanted to build an Art Nouveau tall case clock, and never had a design in my head until a picture I saw on a Alphonse Mucha calendar of a woman in a dress that swirled, and then that's what this became. If you know, it was just such a nice organic form that I gave it. And then I put a bird on top, thinking it could be a cuckoo clock now, but I couldn't find my binoculars, and it didn't really matter what was going on. Let's wander around, DJ.
If folks wander behind him, the camera will follow.
Okay. This here is your late model exercise bike. For those moments when you really need to get out and do things. Let's see if we can do it. You see? You're not go anywhere, but you sure feel like you should. Okay, yeah, and this piece, this is probably my favorite piece in the show. It's a piece Anna and I collaborated on, and for some reason it just worked. It's real striking. I could see using a piece like this not just as a wall ornament, but you could use it as a headboard. You could use it in the bathroom to hang your toothbrush on. You could do any number of little things. Yeah, and the benches actually belong to the Josephy Center, but always available. And let's see if we can get wheeled around here and show this entry. I like large, pretentious things. So this will probably end up in a theater or bar. Yeah, but large and unlikely. Go big or go home. I think 14 feet wide.
Well, this is a home, so we've done both.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, and I feel like Martha Stewart now. The fish are tall and grumpy. I just thought if I made the chairs a foot taller, you'd be able to interact with them differently. You'd be able to feel like you were sitting down with more presence and more awareness. And I like
as they sought to overturn election results in Georgia. Ms. Moss and her mother, Ms. Freeman, are two of the unsung heroes in this.
The swallows are, because sometimes you buy boards that have knots in it. And this is just a handy way to not have knots in the dining room table. Yeah. And of course, no art show is incomplete without a giant clam. They make good wine coolers. We have one at home for a soap dish. We do. Yeah, you could put a lot of coleslaw in there. And this is carved with a novel theme. Yeah, I rather like that. And the fireplace mantle for hanging stockings with care. I should look, I made some notes. Oh, yeah, if you want to come around, DJ, and look at this and imagine Santa coming down the chimney. Yeah, one of the themes that I wanted to talk about too is the idea of putting your own personality into a space, and that referring to a person's taste or a person's history or just a passion or any number of things that can reflect that person's interior space. And if you feel you don't have any taste, I've always told people that they should find somebody they think does and just follow them around for a while. The heron was inspired by a French fireplace I saw a long time ago. And I wish I could remember what it looked like. I've got a Moorish plant stand with an owl, and there's this cupboard. I really like the idea of this one. Leans between fantasy and sort of Art Nouveau and storybook. It's very much, it's a piece you'd see in a children's book, really. But no reason you couldn't notice it. I can easily imagine that in any number of places. And another entryway, because how you approach an entry or approach a room, you approach any space very differently if it's a rectangle versus something more organic. I've always felt that going through an organic shape is much easier than approaching a rectangle. They're so harsh that it does make a difference. And let's carry on. I would like to say too that one of the main purposes of being here today talking is I get to show off a hat that DJ's dad gave me. Well worthwhile, I thought. Okay, if we want to move along. We're here into this hallway. There it is.
So almost everything in here has either a bird on it or wings on it or something that flies on it. Any particular reason for that? Or?
My wife loved birds. Yeah, it would have had, it could have been reptiles, I guess, or postage stamps if she collected, but you never know how that works. Yeah, and there's, a bird with a lot of opinion. Yeah, and over here, this is my oldest daughter's rocking pig, her zebra pig from her childhood. I thought we'd just bring in show toys. I bet I've made over 100 rocking animals. And had many, you can see the wear on it. It had many hours of being rocked on. This piece I built in conjunction with a project we did for Wallowallaby, the coho fish migration game, which was so tedious that I really needed a diversion during the whole thing, and that's where this piece came from. Yeah. Over here, a ship's figurehead. And I've built several of these over the years. And this one I carved last fall and was going to have it sanded and painted for the show. And it had gotten buried in the barn. And when I dug it up, I just liked the way it looked so much that I said, I'm just going to leave it like that. Saved hours of work. The what? The bird? The bird's left over from the circus show. A large Josephy. Oh. I wonder if that was a comment on my lecture. Yeah, the circus show was the last great hoopla that we did at the Josephy Center. The blank for that was a leftover from Caldera's restaurant here in Joseph. No longer a restaurant. But the mermaid still haunts the place. Let's move along. And here we're moving into the kids' room. And the single bed, we've got some more things from the girls. Audrey's high chair and her rabbit. I bet I've made 20 of those rabbits. And I like something I've been doing is hangings that deal with the idea of dreams. And I could see creating an entire room that sort of was expelled out of the idea of dreams. And you could form that to do. It could be blowing out all the furniture and drapes and rugs, and you could form the whole thing around that piece. And I might sometime. Yeah. The bed was it was $10 or $15 at a junk store, and I sawed it apart and put it back together again as something that was a little more interesting for kids. I thought, just to have it to where a little easier to. It became part of the nighttime story, I guess. was the idea. And, you know, your common coat lizard. Yeah, I've always been surprised at the uses I've seen people for coat lizards over the years. There's a lot of them out there now. Yeah, and I once did a coat octopus. It was about 7 feet tall, and it had tentacles that ran all over the wall with all these pegs on it. And it really came out cool. It was a painted piece. Little benches, hall benches, always, they're very functional, solid, and some of them are overly whimsical. This one is pretty straightforward. It conveys the idea of sitting on a bench. And
The hall bench reminds me of the signs you've done for Enterprise and Joseph and Wallstein. Any connection?
oh, I did them all, yeah. I think that's the connection is, I pretty much have a theme. Everyone sees, you know, they say that they can recognize my work. And if not, I just get blamed for it anyway. So, here we have your standard issue carrot sailboat. And this is a donation to the Josephy Center. So if anyone needs a 9-foot carrot sailboat, all proceeds go to the Josephy Center. This started out life actually as a pig car. And it was for parades, and it was nearly complete. And the fellow who ordered it passed away with no heirs. He was the largest pig collector of pig items, probably in the United States. He had 40,000 pig items. And he'd been a good customer, lots of pig work over the years. And then I got an order to build a carrot race car. So I adapted it over to a carrot race car. And that lasted for several years. And then they said, enough of this race car, make it into a sailboat. So I did. And then they got divorced and gave it to me. And now I'm trying to give it away. Okay, and yeah, your standard wooden trophy, pretty self-explanatory. Yeah, I was imagining it with antlers 3 or 4 times that height. And I think I'll do that eventually and have them winding up the wall and doing other things. The nightstand has hooves. Someone once told me they didn't mind things with hooves and feet. They didn't care for things that had faces and legs. Then they became dangerous. They could live with one or the other. And I've built a lot of beds, and it was fun at the opening and other places to see young people and kids flopped out and feeling that comfortable with the exhibit to become part of the show, really. So I thought that was pretty cool. And like I was saying, does it become performance art if you're interacting with it and just so comfortable with that it's part of what you do? You're kind of king salmon coat rack with coat hangers, which are also pretty self-explanatory. Yeah, and we've got Coley Riggs that did a wonderful jewelry display. More Josephy Center benches. We have a kids' bookcase to go with the idea that kids are in little birds. Yeah, these are a little more friendly than some birds. They seem pretty happy to be there. This bird seems like it really wants to go someplace. You'd have to wonder where, I guess. Yeah. Yeah, let's continue on to the kitchen. I feel like Bob Vila, you know? This is the kitchen for, it looks like the idea of breakfast and coffee. Yeah, I hope DJ can come in and show some of the other attributes of the room. The kitchen's always everybody's favorite part of the house,
Okay.
as well as just the heart of the home. I always gravitate towards the kitchen, and everybody else does. And this kitchen, within hours at the Josephy Center show, had people basically moved into it, treating it like a kitchen. The little dining room, the kitchen set is again more birds and insects. There's yeah, storage with kingfishers, and little theme cupboards with things. The junk drawer already has junk in it. Yeah, just functionality that a person can make interesting. We don't have to just live with rectangles. And I wanted to show the corner work because I do a lot of trim in houses. And these are actually fairly simple ones for corners that we do, but it does show how you can make a strong statement with a fairly simple trim if you augment it somewhat absurdly. Yeah, there you go, DJ. Yeah. And there's some very large versions of that we've done.
I read, or I heard that a lot of this lumber came from Jay-Z.
Almost all of it came from Jay-Z Lumber, who's just been more than generous and puts up with my unlikely orders and does deliveries and asks, what are you going to do with that?
It also seems like you're doing a lot of altercation, like these chairs. After
Yeah.
you mentioned that they were high back.
Yeah. Because the statement I wanted to make wasn't about the idea of making a chair, which is a pain. I've made a lot of them. But it was the idea of extending it and giving it character, giving it a presence that it, didn't have before, changing that theme. So yeah, that's exactly,
It makes me wonder.
augmented.
Oh yeah, it's like collecting the original furniture, if that plays a part in your creative process.
Oh, I love doing junk stores. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I've heard.
And yeah, it's what I do. Yeah, no, and I've been a collector of things since I was very young. I bought my first junk when I was 19.
Your first, what was the first junk?
Oh, a set of 18th century French provincial chairs.
Right.
Yep. Okay, well, let's move on out of the kitchen. It's a little claustrophobic. And talk about the idea of community artists, which is a theme I wanted to get back to. Where if you have things that you feel comfortable doing, and it's a great way to learn, is to always be experiencing things that you have no idea what you're talking about, but are willing to tackle it. Because if you're not only building furniture and sculpture and carousel animals and things, but you're also designing t-shirts, you're building signs for the community, you're doing posters for people, you're doing projects for the Rotary, you're doing projects for the churches, you're doing projects for the Josephy Center, for Willowology, for the History Center. If a person's willing to work in several mediums, and you're willing to be open-minded about the projects you take on, if you're not just feeling like you're in, I paint golden retrievers, well, that's all right. But if you want to be a working artist, unless you really nail that golden retriever, you'd better branch out a little bit. So that's what I've always tried to do. And I've always had lots of work. I've done restaurants, bed and breakfasts, bars, theaters, garden houses. I've done, basements.
How do you start being a community artist?
Oh, by starting letting people know what you're capable of. Do a few pieces, get it out there. Do things they'll notice. If you want to make a statement, even if it isn't very good, do it large. People will notice. There's always ways to get your work out there, and start by doing things that are affordable and colorful, or at least with a strong composition, and folks will notice. They really will. And then pretty soon you'll be building a screen door, you'll be building a stand for a bathtub, and then you'll be, painting a giant potato. I was thinking of some of the jobs that I've done. I once painted a 15-foot potato for some folks. They were thrilled. Done rocking caterpillars. I once delivered a 6-foot guppy to the head of the Oregon Arts Commission. I've done, I once sent a giraffe to Siberia. I mean, there's work, there's then, and then doing classes and workshops, and, I taught art at the junior high. It's, trying to get the kids confused enough they'll pay attention.
How long have you been working in this community? I mean, I know your screen doors, I know it's at least 20 years.
Oh, I've been here 36 years, I think, and almost all of that has been doing this full time.
What was the first work that you did in Wallowa County? How did you start here?
The first piece I did when I decided to become a full-time artist was a fantasy screen door for the Art Angle for Donna Butterfield. And then that led to all sorts of other things. And pretty soon I was putting giant lizards on the sides of buildings and turning down things that were even too weird for me.
I can imagine someone starting as a community artist and thinking, okay, well, Steve can do that because he builds giant things that he can move into people's way.
Yes.
This is big.
Tripping hazards, I call them.
A lot of artists are visual media. A lot of them say they take pictures or they write, and that's their art. A lot of them make little handcrafts, the size of cups or plates and stuff like that. How does that smaller, less gigantic medium fit in the community artists?
Oh, that's easy. If you're building coffee cups, then build 40 different kinds of coffee cups. Offer coffee cups that advertise all sorts of things. Do coffee cups that have birds and toaster ovens on them, or do coffee cups that are multifunctional, the Swiss Army knife of a coffee cup. You could, there's ways to branch out if you just are a little open-minded to it. Yeah. Do I have any questions? Random interruptions? Do you have any curiosities? Like, why did you do this? Who's going to dust this?
It's all curious, and I love it all. I cannot imagine where I would, put these things, but they're beautiful. I love them.
Well, it's the idea of, thinking about your space and how you want to react to it. How do you want other people to react to it? What's the cat going to think of this? Yeah.
Well, if your wife loves birds, who loves fish? You do a lot of fish.
I do a lot of fish. I grew up on the coast. It was an entree,
This is probably a little more in the weeds of artwork, but it leads to a question that I have. big question is, how do you price your art?
Oh,
And most of the stuff around here, people come in and say, okay, I understand why this bench is $500, but most people say this is fair pricing. And so you seem to have nailed that. I also get questions as to why the carousel horse is so expensive.
oh, because if I keep it, I'm perfectly happy. I like that one.
So you price out based on whether you want to keep it or not.
Well, sometimes, yeah. It makes me seem kind of puffed up and pretentious to have a fancy, expensive piece out there. Yeah. But I guess versatility is what I think of as important. And I just enjoy what I do, you know. My oldest daughter says that I create large, unlikely spaces and then expect people to inhabit them, which happens, as I did for you, a large, unlikely space, and now you inhabit it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. How did that come to be? Because you do a lot of interior spaces. I've seen a lot of your work, like in the Grand and the OK Theater.
Yeah.
Do people just approach you with those?
Yes.
No
And
worries.
I've done a lot of bed and breakfasts, bars, and I've done just a room for people. I've done, you know, an entryway or a library or, you know, a kitchen. So if you can create a piece, the idea would be to keep that theme and to create an entire space that where the space carries on the feeling of that piece, and you know, hopefully has some enough continuity to, you know, to hold together. Yeah. So I think that's our show for today.
Oh, one other
One
plug,
other-
though. We do have a class coming up, July 9th and 10th.
Yes, we
the wood
do.
Carving relief class. So
I'm
if
doing
anybody
relief carving.
is interested in taking that class with Steve,
Yes.
you can find it and register on our website, josephy.org. It's in the calendar, or it's listed under education, adult classes and workshops.
And I think coffee and Band-Aids will be provided. So-
All right.
Okay,
Thank you
Oh,
for joining
thanks,
us.
Steve.
same time next week.
Not really. No. No questions on the for our online viewers.
Oh, no worries.
I would probably drop this child.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's good.
Dreams are like that.
It's not rigid.
You don't have any idea, do you? Why your mind is so creative
No.
and just wanders. It
It
wanders
does
around.
wander, unfortunately.
Comes up with stuff.
When we first met, we had a conversation about how we think, and Steve thinks, sure, like, right now as we're having this conversation, he's seeing images. And when I think, there's a stream of words going across my brain. Every single word that I say or you say goes like across,
Wow.
inside my head.
Wow.
And I like to write, and I'm just a different kind of person. But who knows? Brain wiring could affect. I mean, we know it
don't watch
affects.
TV. I hear.
No TV.
No.
No TV, no cell phone, no. I mean, that,
It's all those things from cell phones that affect the brain.
was that always? We should still be recording.
I know, this is an
I
interesting
know.
I didn't know if it was appropriate for me to speak
Oh, yeah,
the inside story of Steve,
Oh.
because, you know, he won't, if there's somebody calls and says, and has a project, he'll just flatly turn it down if he thinks anybody else can do it.
Well, somebody else can
They'll
do
say,
it.
if
I
somebody
don't
else
have-
can do it, I don't want to do it,
I don't have to.
which is interesting.
Were you always that way, or is that more?
Oh, no, when I was broke, I would say, you betcha, what do you got?
Oh, I am really curious how you got from where you started to here, which it does seem like, you know, your work is everywhere. and
It's
people are
literally,
coming-
it's
literally
unavoidable,
everywhere,
yeah.
right. So, I wish, I think lots of people would be interested in hearing.
The
a little more
creation story.
specifically how that happened, yeah, because, you know, I can think of, you know, there's like you and like Ted Julie, both you guys seem like you've been working maybe a comparable amount of time, and both have been able to do that as
You
your
know, look at
primary-
Chuck Fraser, there's lots of folks. that-
Yeah, not just you and Ted, but those two came to mind.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Similar vintage.
Vintage.
There you go.
Enthusiasm or, dedication to your
Yeah,
craft.
yeah.
And community, you must, I mean, if you call yourself a community artist, you must have a huge stake in community.
In the community.
Yeah, I was gonna say that, I wasn't gonna interrupt your talk,
You
but
become part of it.
Right.
you only are gonna be a community artist if you're engaged in the community,
Right.
interested in the community in the first place, yeah.
And that's one of the things that attracted me to Joseph was the sense of community. There's a community, they look out for each other and work together, play together. Yeah, I like it a lot.
Between that,
We've been busy.
this is Robin.
I'm Joella.
Hi.
Robin
Nice to meet you.
lives in Calderas.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah,
And
it is really wonderful.
Imagine, it's snow all there.
That's great. Good for you.
It is.
I'm glad somebody was there that